Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Real Israel Podcast with me, your host, Chaim Mailspin. Join us as we dive into Israel's past, present, and future as we explore the rich history, current events, and visionary perspectives shaping this dynamic region. So let me ask you this about when this, okay, so you remember Assad regime. He was, okay, even back to the Ottoman times, Druze have been getting massacred. I mean, you guys are a minority and holding on to your identity and holding on to your love for Israel. And I'm going to get to the future, what we should do. But been massacred in the Ottoman times, and these jihadists continue to try. Anyone that's different than them is what it is. I know the Western mind is so. I mean, it's hard for the Western mind to understand, because the Western mind is like, I'm doing my American dream. I'm doing my life. I don't hurt you. You don't hurt me. You hurt me. Oh yeah, I'll hurt you back. But if you don't hurt me, I'm going to do my life and dwell in peace and make my money. And that's the American mentality. They don't get that Druze didn't do something to these jihadists to make them attack them. Israel didn't do something to the Hamas to make them massacre all of us. It's not like we did something. It's the jihadist mentality. If you're different than me, I'm going to eventually, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the day after that, I'm going to massacre you. That is the jihadist way. Yeah. Conquest by the sword. So now throughout the generations, Druze, because they're different, have been getting massacred. Finally, you have Assad regime, which also wasn't. In 2024, they were trying to attack the same mountain, weren't they? In 2024, Assad himself was.
Assad, the thing about Assad, it's sad to say, I'm hearing a lot of Syrians, including ex-Muslims, saying right now that we wish that Assad was back. Now, they never would have said that. Assad was evil. The only thing was for Assad is that he was equally evil to everybody.
Yeah.
Oppressing, so he was just really, except from a very small group of Alawites, but not all of them that were under him. The rest, he was just oppressing and killing everyone. And he was killing the Druze as well. He was killing the Christians. A sad thing is these Bedouins that are now going to slaughter the Druze were protected by the Druze during the Assad regime. They many times fled to the Druze mountain to hide from him, and the Druze welcomed them in their homes. These Bedouins that we're seeing right now, Dar'a, that's the Bedouin area that's separating in the mountain of the Druze, Dar'a, and then the Druze villages, and then Israel.
Right.
So that's like a big no man's land there, about 5 million Bedouins living there. So these Bedouins there were the ones that Israel built a hospital for them when Assad was killing them. So the Druze thought that these Bedouins were their allies, were their friends, because they were, under the same oppression. But then they were the first one to betray them and start slaughtering them. Now, if you remember, the Jews had the same thing on October 7. The ones that were killed were around Gaza were the one that really were the friends of the Gazans, the one that loved them.
They call them peaceniks, like they're very peace activists. It's the ones that were massacred by the people that were giving jobs. Would you like to work in the garden, clean the house, and help and get money?
Let me help your kids come out for medical care and stuff like that. Exactly.
They came in and beat. Some of them were beaten to death with clubs. Some of the Jewish people. Anyway, horrible.
By the people that they were helping. Yeah, exactly. And they were the ones who came and showed where they are, and they were collecting information. So the same betrayal is happening right now by the Muslim Bedouins in that area to the Druze. The Druze have been living, like you said, for the last 1,000 years under Muslim occupation. And that's why their religion became secret, by the way. And that's why they start to keep their identity. In many places, the Druze will pretend to be Muslims just to survive. The only place that the Druze actually freely outspoken says, no, we're not Muslims, is Israel. It's the only place that they have freedom of religion. In Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, they can't freely go and speak out there. They can't rise their head up tall. They will be cut down. Same with Christians and other minorities. So it's been a conquest of oppression that is happening. And just like you said, they want to kill you because you're not like them. And not only that, they want to force you to convert. And usually even after you convert, they'll just take your women and slaughter the man. Because they're just really extreme jihadists.
I know that there's been pressures from Iran to make a corridor. They call it the Shiite corridor through Syria to Israel not to bring help or help Israel, but to bring missiles, RPGs, Shawaz, bombs, and rocket launchers and cruise missiles and all that, to bring it through that area. And the Druze were in many ways the silent protectors of Israel. Silent means you don't really see them so much. But they are standing there as a wall inside Syria, and I've said this for years. Like, the Druze are protecting us, and making that very hard for Iran to come right up to our border with all the rockets. That we've been bombing these caravans. Israel's been bombing these caravans in Dara, a lot of bombing in Dara, because that's where Iran was bringing the weapons to the what they wanted to become Bedouin allies. Yeah. So my question is this: when Assad's regime fell to Jolani and his thugs, ISIS thugs, I know that we suddenly, our guys, even Yahalom's guys, my actual team, were able to go in to Syria and be able to take out a lot of those weapons by the truckload on Rosh Kaved, on these Tetra flatbed trucks, and take a lot of the weapons of the Assad regime away from those, because we could see what they would do with it if they had them. We could clearly see what they would do. So we were able to take some of those weapons away, set up positions like Quneitra. I used to take groups of tourists and look out from the Valley of Tears lookout, and what they call
Emeka Bacha,
the Valley of Tears, Cafe Annan, which is a play on words like coffee in the clouds, but it's named after Kofi Annan, the UN head guy back in the 2000s. Yeah, beginning of the 2000s. So what we would do is I'd say, look, down there is Quneitra. You have ISIS in there. You have ISIS in Quneitra. Now not anymore. Since the Assad regime is gone, we were able to take that, and even the entirety of Mount Hermon, which is unbelievable.
It's amazing.
What would you say should be the future now that Assad is gone and before these ISIS gangs can do anything? Would you say that, as was requested by Sheikh, I forgot his name, in Lebanon?
In Lebanon or in Israel?
In Lebanon, he said, please take Sueda in Syria as a let's call it an area under Israeli defense.
Yeah. In Lebanon, we're not hearing so much that voice because the Druze there have been very heavily affected by Iran and Hezbollah. We're seeing support, but not that much. But in Syria, you're hearing people saying. So here's what I see. The only way that you can have Christians, Druze, and minorities living in peace, and also peace for Israel in that border, is if Israel and the international community will either annex that area and bring it under Israel, and then let the minorities live there in peace like in Israel, or help them create their own independent state where Druze, Christians, and other minorities can live in peace and provide some kind of protection until they can establish their own protection to keep away the Muslims that want to come and slaughter and kill them. That's the only way, the only way.
I love it.
Other than that, they're just going to be second-class, fourth-class citizens living in, and the fear all day long of having their daughters raped and kidnapped and their men slaughtered and their religious, priests and sheikhs humiliated. That is Syria. There's no other way. And if the world want to help, if the world really cares about Syria, that's the solution, guys. Not to create a PR stunt to try to make an ISIS terrorist looking good on the expense of the Christians and the Druze, but actually to go and protect the Christians and the Druze and bring them closer to Israel so Israel can protect them. Only way. There's literally, I can't see another solution on the map because I don't see these tribes of jihadist radicals changing anytime soon, at least not in the next 25 years, and most likely also after, because they're raising their kids. So they're probably going to be just like them. And
the 1,700 Alawites that were loyal to, Assad was an Alawite, Bashar al-Assad, and you had Hafez al-Assad, and you have this Alawite Iranian-backed leadership, essentially just like Hamas, the Alawites were. But then so they're bad guys because they were influenced by Iran, and you have this group removing the 1,700 Alawites were massacred in jihadist style. And so I guess people had hoped, everyone in the West, I think, really hoped there could be a new day where that's it. They're not just going to keep on being jihadist on other people, but that was a war against the Assad allied factions, take their weapons, and that's it. But it turns out it's not it. It's just a way of life. Anyone that's not like them is going to be massacred.
Every day they will look for another excuse to go and massacre. The first excuse that they had to go and massacre the Druze were after Israel allowed the religious Druze to come to Israel to visit their holy place, the Prophet Jethro's memorial area. Nabi Shoaib. So when they saw that Israel actually welcomed them, really, Arab people from an enemy country opened the doors, welcomed them, helped them, gave them bus and food and this, and let them go and pray peacefully without slaughtering them, they made the Muslim look really bad. So they decided to start, intensify the attacks on the Druze, and then they made up a fabricated audio recording of a Druze sheikh that apparently offended the Prophet. Not a face, just an audio voice, and it was found to be also fake. But that was enough for hundreds of thousands of jihadists to start going. People that lived like 700 kilometers away in a tent, never met a Druze in his life probably, said, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna murder them and I'm gonna take their daughters and rape them. Like that's how the mentality is crazy. Same thing with the Christians. They're just looking for excuses to go and murder them. And this is not gonna change. It's not gonna change. We're seeing right now, even the moderates, you know.
Right.
I just saw a video of students for engineers in Syria, in the University of Damascus. You think that's like their highest university. So you would expect that video to see people kind of hipsters looking maybe with laptops, kind of looking intelligent, looking a little bit more, less the rough kind of soldier, more a feminine kind of version of like, hey, I drink latte coffee and I want to study here about engineering. I don't know, like you would expect to see a little bit more softened kind of version.
Yeah.
It looked like a Taliban convention. They were dressed like the Taliban. They were standing outside the university and they were calling a jihad to massacre the Druze students. Allahu Akbar.
In Damascus.
In Syria and Damascus. So even their moderate students are showing to be. So Syria is going really down the drain. And it's just a matter of time until we're going to start hearing more and more massacres. So now once they're done with the Druze now, you know, they're starting to Alawite the Christians. By the way, one of the audio recordings that they sent to the army is when you're going to massacre the Druze, please don't do the same mistake we did with the Christians. Do not film it and do not share it with the world. It backfired on us. So he said, shave their mustaches, slaughter them, kill them, film, take their daughters, but don't film it. And then they even added, and also the Israeli airstrikes are targeting our forces, the army, so start hiding among civilian population using your human shields. So that is the regime.
There's two
and
things.
Right now they're on the Druze, tomorrow's on the Christians back.
And on Israel, that's what I was going to say is if people don't stand up to this in the West and think, well, they're just massacring the Jewish people in southern Israel. It's not me. You know, I'm not Jewish. This is even in times of Nazism. You have the same thing. Well, it's the Druze. It's not me. If you don't stand up, it's gonna be after you. So I wanted to ask you to speak to any student. You talked about students in universities in the West. So any student, and just say, look, I know that there's supposed to be UN peacekeepers. There's supposed to be this morality of the West where we stand up against bloodshed, against the innocent being massacred and butchered on, you know, right in front of our eyes. I don't hear any lectures in the university. I don't hear any outcry. I don't hear it. I don't know. And they're in fact the opposite. You said asking Israel to stop protecting. Okay, they don't want to have an outcry. Well, they're trying to stop us from standing in the gap. What would you say about this hypocrisy of the West? I mean, this is hard stuff to talk about. But what would you say about that to these students?
I would say if you're a student out there and you're far away from this conflict, just be aware that you are a very easy target for manipulations. There's a lot of very, very powerful, very rich forces out there that are doing everything they can to manipulate you as a student. So you'll end up supporting the bad guys and condemning the good guys. There is a pledge for minorities in the Middle East, including my people, the Druze, and many other, the Christians and other minorities, LGBTQ communities, the atheist people, doesn't matter what are happening, these are all being slaughtered by the Muslims, by radical Islamists, jihadists, Salafis in the Middle East. And the only one that is actually protecting them is the Jews in the Middle East. But somehow you've been manipulated by very evil forces to think it's the other way around. If you care about the Middle East, you need to look at the people of Iran that are being, the free people of Iran oppressed by their own government, the people in Syria, people in Palestine that are being thrown out of rooftops and killed and deprived from having their own food given to them by the same terrorists that kidnapped. Don't believe that jihadists are the good guys. I know it's crazy to say that I even need to say that, but Osama bin Laden was not right. Hitler is not the good guy. I never thought that I would stand on TV and say that to students in America, but it's important. You need to wake up and know that the same people that cheered when 9/11 happened, when your people got killed and slaughtered and butchered, are the same people that are going right now massacring the Druze, massacring the Christians, the same people that kidnapped Jewish children and took them into dungeons in Gaza. They are your enemy as well. And if you really care about the Middle East, stop shaming the good guys and supporting. I tell you a crazy story that many Arabs that actually flee these oppressing countries could be because they're gay, because they're straight, because they have an open-minded, because they're just different religion, and they sit there and they dream one day I will reach Germany or I'll reach America where I can feel free to finally pursue my dream, my art, to finally not have a hijab on my head, to finally go and become a lawyer. I'm a girl, I want to become a lawyer. I don't want to become a sex slave of some warlord, you know. So they work so hard to get out of there. And when they manage to flee, the biggest shock that they get when they get to the West, especially to these students, is that when they get asked about where they came from, they start telling the truth. And then these people start calling them, oh, you're an Islamophobe, you're a Zionist, and they start shutting them down. Meanwhile, you'll see the Muslim Brotherhood, you know, students are standing with them, smiling, and they look at these guys and says, we got you also here. You will never be safe. And that is the biggest shock that many of these Arabs feeling outside of Israel, that they're like, we're afraid to tell them that these guys are their enemies because they've been so brainwashed that they will hate us for warning them. Many people in Europe are afraid to speak because they say, like, even the Europeans don't get us. They will actually end up ratting us up to their friends who will end up come and kill us for speaking that, exposing them that they want to come and take your country and put it under Sharia law. And they're doing this by birth and by slowly taking. So I would say to these students, do your homework and just be careful. The West has been compromised. If it was, you know, the Biden administration was heavily compromised by the Shia. They were sending their people to go in and try to send policies to make Iran look good, Palestine look good, and et cetera, the Shia, you know, radicals. The Trump administration seems to have been heavily compromised by the Sunni, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and et cetera. Now, I'm very thankful that Donald Trump is the president and not the ones before, because he's way better. But I'm just warning, there's a lot of very wrong people giving him very wrong advices about what's happening. And their agendas are not the same agenda as the US. The Islam still have an agenda to take over planet Earth. And the worst thing that can happen in their eyes is losing land. And they don't want to lose land in Syria, because that means that they just lost the Dar al-Salam, the House of Islam,
Right.
and became House of War, Dar al-Harb. That's how they call any place that is not under Islam. By the way, America is a house of war, as per these Muslims that are supporting and just gave the administration $100 billion. So it looks like we're watching again how money is becoming more important than life. And if you're, I've seen a video, a horrific image of a maybe 10 years old girl or a boy. He just had long hair. It's hard in that age sometimes to see, maybe 8 even. And a jihadist walked to her house or his house, killed his family, and now he's filming himself toying with that kid, and he's slapping him and he's kicking him. And the kid, who maybe just the night before asked his father, Father, can we play football today? Because kids, you know, they want to play with their dads, you know that. And maybe the father came and told him, I'm tired today, let's do it tomorrow. So that was his life. And then he wakes up tomorrow and he sees his father being massacred, his mother is being raped, and all of that because someone sacrificed them for the sake of money and a PR stunt to make a terrorist look good. And he's been hit, and the kid keeps standing up. You see, he's a strong kid, and they smack him and they punch him and they kick him, and he keeps standing up on them, and they grab him by the hairs and he's fighting them. That kid's life could have been saved if Israel was allowed to go in. But for some bizarre reason, they told Israel, don't go in. It's going to make an ISIS guy look bad. We're running a PR stunt to make an ISIS guy look good so he can go and look like he saved them. But he never came.
I think that Trump, when he met Jolani, which was a big shock to the world that he would meet him, I think that he was trying to extend an olive branch of peace, you know, and just say, hey, you have an opportunity here. You're new on the block. You just showed up here. You have a chance to not be like Assad and not be like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or you know, like Osama bin Laden. You have a chance to be different. And we can see with how his career has been the results, and he chose wrongly. I'd say one thing that really is hard for me with the West in general is that they think that appeasement or capitulation, you know what this word appeasement means? It's like they want us to go to the Hamas, you're a hero soldier. I'm standing in the gap as a soldier, as a sergeant major, and they want us to go with a menu like in a restaurant and say, hey Hamas, Would you like the fish? Would you like the steak? What would you like?
Yeah.
They think that would you like $1 billion? Would you like $1 trillion? Would this work for you? Well, on the menu we have, that's what they actually are thinking. If we capitulate and we appease the jihadists, we go and appease Jolani, he's gonna somehow snap and say, well, you know what? I do want the American dream. I do want a Starbucks. You have on the menu 10 Starbucks. We'll give you 100 Starbucks, Jolani. Will that work for you? Will you now be a cultured Western ally? But the problem is the West does not understand that capitulating, appeasing the enemy only makes them think that they've beat the West, and they're going to be worse.
They think they understand. It's crazy. I think they understand the Middle East. They think that ceasefire is something noble that can be reached with these guys. Now imagine if Israel would have listened to the West, and while Hamas was slaughtering people in the kibbutzim, Israel would have been pushed to come and say, okay, let's not de-escalate the situation, guys. Hamas, let's call for ceasefire while they're slaughtering and killing. That's not a time for ceasefire right now. That is the time to actually go and save lives and kill bad guys. Same thing in Syria, asking to, let's look for a ceasefire while the Bedouins are going Allahu Akbar in their villages, torching and killing anything. That is not the time to call for a ceasefire. That is the time to intervene and save lives. Maybe after, when you pushed them, and you defeated them, and they still want to fight with you, let's go for ceasefire, guys. But during that slaughter, that onslaught, is terrible. Now, I do believe that Donald Trump have good intentions, and I think, it's very hard to become a president of the United States. In one day now, you find yourself world police. You need to understand in depth different dynamics and world politics and ancient battles that have been going for maybe hundreds, if not thousands of years, and to know the right decisions. And you probably hear about cultures you never heard before, and now you need to understand it and get the right idea and come with good intentions and have good discernment to see what's good, what's not, what's right, what's bad, what's evil, what's light. And that's why it's important, the council of people that you have around you. And if your council of people have been bought and been, influenced by different forces that are trying to push different agendas,
the war
then you're gonna make terrible mistakes that are gonna cost people's lives. So I believe America, still hoping that Jolani can save Syria, is getting a very bad counsel from very bad players that are just lying to them. And then that is end up costing life, because they're coming telling Israel, Israel, stop it. We have something good here. We're going to make something good. You're going to ruin it. But we got to save the Druze. They're being slaughtered. No, I know. But trust me, I'm talking to him. He's going to call ceasefire any minute. It's not going to help. I mean, seriously, if you ask anyone on the ground, it's just going to end up having a genocide unfold in front of your eyes, because they're trying to get a terrorist to call a ceasefire, meanwhile trying to make him look good with a PR stunt, rather than let Israel go in and defend them. So whoever is giving the advices behind the scenes is either been bought or just very naive and very not wise in the way he's giving advice to this administration. And we're seeing that again and again. Suddenly he goes to Qatar and he comes back with an airplane. I mean, any dimwit could have told him, listen, man, that's a bad idea. You don't need that airplane. It's a bad idea. These guys have their hands soaked in blood all around the Middle East. I would not go to them, and definitely not get a gift from them. But he took it. And there's a lot of bad players here that are kind of making things look very bad for America by giving them wrong advice. And also, it's a sad thing, and I don't like saying it, but I think Kissinger said that. He said, it's very dangerous to be America's enemy, but it's way deadlier to be its allies. And I don't like that. I don't like that, because I think, thank God to America, we're not living under Nazi Germany or communist Russia.
Yeah, you see the frustration of Steve Witkoff with Hamas trying to broker a ceasefire. You see with Tom, what was his name? Tom, that did trying to broker the ceasefire, Tom Barak. Trying, and you see the frustration, they just don't know what they're dealing with. They don't understand what they're dealing with. And even when America receives billions of dollars from Qatar into the universities, does anyone really think that they're just that generous? They're just such good allies that they are so generous to just bless and help the universities. Do they really think the universities need that money?
Let me ask them a question, a very serious question to what you're saying. If there is a culture that calls your people the house of war, that's the definition that they have to your place. Your place is Dar al-Harb. And then they start sending billions of dollars to your people, but selected people, the ones that will raise your children and the one that will later on grow your politicians. Your enemy that calls you the house of war.
Right.
And that the only reason they're not invading and taking you down and enforcing Sharia law on you is because they can't, because you're too strong. So they're sending you money now. Anyone else seeing that something is wrong, like, am I the only one? Are you the only one? Like, can't you see that there's something very, very wrong here? They're not your allies. They're not your allies.
Just to summarize, as we bring this all to a close, I just want to, after the Assad regime in Israel did take initiative to go and take some positions in as a buffer zone, as a defense, not because we're colonists, the people who call Israel occupiers, that's such an offense. It's such a lie. It's an evil. It's probably the worst lie that exists, because it doesn't recognize our historical presence here. You dig anywhere in the ground, you find Hebrew. Why is that? How did those Zionists get that Hebrew in the ground? How did they get that in there? Possibly because we were here for thousands and thousands of years. Remember King Solomon, remember King David? But then they say illegal occupiers, not returning to your ancestral homeland. But that's just a frustration I have, again, with the West, this word occupiers. But the fact that we are able to right now provide this defense barrier by being in Syria, occupying southern Syria, that's a good thing. Would you say, like how the Balfour Declaration, to summarize it, to wrap up, the Balfour Declaration, remember it was the British, and they said, look, we're going to help the Jewish people for a time and a season to help them have a Jewish homeland. Would you say that Israel could do a Netanyahu or a Netanyahu-Trump declaration, an Abrahamic declaration, that the Sueda would be a self-governed place patrolled by Israel for a time and a season, not that we want to rule there forever, but until that Sueda Military Council or whoever it is could rise up and have enough strength and enough weapons, U.S. could supply weapons, and that would be an autonomous country, hopefully as a friendship and as a defense for Israel, because the Druze are great at defending Israel. And then all the Druze that would be their capital. Would you say that would be a good post-Assad Syria? And even, one last thing. There is a prophecy in the book of Isaiah, chapter 19. It's an ancient Hebrew scroll found in the Dead Sea. It was found in 1948 in the Dead Sea. And it says in there's going to be a time of peace where Syria, it says Assyria, will be friends with Israel and Egypt. So it says, Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, Israel, my inheritance. They three will be in a unity of peace. It hasn't happened yet in all of the history on this level. And it says the Assyrian will come into Egypt and it'll come through Israel, and the Egyptian will come into Syria and it'll come through Israel, and there's just going to be this highway of peace. Would you say that could be that very thing could happen right now?
I say absolutely it could happen. We've seen history change very fast sometimes when the right people, strong people, make the right decisions. We need to remind people, Syria doesn't belong to Muslims. Syria belonged to the Christians before. Muslims came and occupied that land and took that and enslaved them and started kicking out all the Jews and the Christians out of it. That's why the population of Christians and Jews started going down, and then that country became jihadist town. Syria definitely does not belong to ISIS. And just because they went with foreign fighters and took over the country doesn't belong to them. And there is place in Syria that belong to the Druze. There is place in Syria that belong to the Christians. They're ancient culture that lived there in this land, and that is their land. That's their churches. That's their homes. And if the West will suddenly wake up and say, let's help these people to have their country back, you will end up having the best country after Israel in the Middle East growing up there. And it's going to be very, very bad for the jihadists, because they're still going to live in the Stone Age and going back. But suddenly you start to see culture, science, art, literature, businesses growing up there. You start seeing connection between Israel, tourism going there. They're coming to Israel peacefully because there's no jihadists. No one want to suicide bomb himself on anyone. You're going to start seeing Americans starting businesses there. You're going to start seeing, literally women walking the street freely with a smile on their face, not being afraid to be abducted. And it's going to become such a great place. So that is a good cause. That is, if someone want to see something good happen in the Middle East, start pushing for that. Stop trying to push to become the PR agents for Al-Qaeda. That is not going to solve.
Last word as we end about the flag. I just love the flag. I love the gold fringe that often is around it. Can you explain to me a little bit about the colors and what it's all? Why so many colors? And people don't know.
So the Druze flag is the flag of that religion, which is a secret religion that believes in one God. They're called Wahidun. And they also believe that all religions are right in a way that they all point to the same God. Just to different teachings, different ways, but they're trying to guide humans to go to the same God. The flags here represents the different prophets that are all biblical prophets, by the way, from Elijah, from they refer to Solomon as a prophet, and from Jethro, and etc. and etc. You know, the father-in-law of Moses, the father of Zipporah, that welcomed Moses and taught him, etc. And also each color represent different aspects of life, which is the land, the teaching, the kindness, the good, you know, the harvest, and all kind of stuff. So it's the colors that matter in this flag, and they just represent kind of the Druze people. And it can come in different shapes. If it's a star, if it's a flag, it's not the gay parade flag, please.
No.
I had people come to my mom's house in Elad because she puts the flag proudly outside of her house, a Druze flag and a Israeli flag, and some people thought it was a LGBTQ restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my mom was like, no.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I just look back to the history of Jethro and Moses, and I think it's the coolest relationship. The father-in-law of Moses' father-in-law, his wife's dad. And in Numbers chapter 10, verse 29, I always like to end with a little encouragement. And it talks about his name is also Hovav, son of Reuel. He's a Midianite guy. And he says, we're journeying to this place in Numbers chapter 10, ancient text. It's part of the Torah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 29. And he says, we're journeying to this place where God says, I will give it to you. And so you got this father of all the Jews that looked at as the ancestor of all the Jews. And he says to him, please, Moses says to Jethro, please don't leave us. Please, you know where we can camp in the wilderness. You can be as eyes for us. If you come with us, we will share with you whatever the good Adonai gives to us. So Israel, Moses is representing Israel, and he's saying, Jethro, don't leave us. It's not like a Ruth Naomi thing. Don't leave us. You're going to be our eyes. You're going to show us the way. And he actually says, I'm going to also help you set up your government. That's how we have a government, because of the Druze, because of Jethro. So he's like this, he knows the desert. Moses grew up in the palace in Egypt. But you got this dude saying, let's do it together. We're going to share in whatever good Adonai gives to us. I think that's a great culmination of it, and to look with hope to that togetherness.
That is beautiful, you just said, brother. And actually, now that you say it, we're seeing the same thing happening now in Israel. The Druze have decided to go with the Israelis, with the Jews, and God have blessed them for that. And the Druze have decided to be also the eyes of the Jews into the Arab world in the Middle East. You know how many Druze generals and special forces and mista'avim we have that help the Jews understand that culture because they know it better than anyone else. So they're helping them navigate in this desert of radical jihadist Islam that is going here, and being with them. And you see, while we're speaking, there was a group of Druze girls, like maybe 2-3 months ago, from Yarka, teenager girls, that send the satellite to space. Minorities in Israel, girls get to send satellite to space and do science project, while girls in Syria are being kidnapped and becoming sex slaves. And big thing for that is, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And the Druze in Israel had the privilege to be a blessing to the Jews, and there's a great reward in that. They're living in the best country in the Middle East, while the Druze in other places are living, fighting for their life, because they have really evil enemies that descended upon them, including Christians, by the way, that are just, suffering and fighting, and they're all together there, living hell.
It's true, and I think back to, I know we're going to end, but I was thinking back to the missile of the Hezbollah, these missiles that struck in nearing it was 2024, I believe it was, or 2024, when Hezbollah attacked. And up in Majd al-Shams, Israelis love to ski there and love to enjoy the beautiful Druze culture there. And do those jihadists care where they're shooting? On a playground, I think it was 12 or 13 children murdered by a Hezbollah terrorist missile. Do they care? No. All they care about is death and destruction. And I remember seeing the bodies of these children in Israel, in northern Israel, and they just shot a Druze place. So anyone who thinks that they can appease the demon of jihadism by feeding it anything is sorely mistaken. And one day that alligator will eat them.
Yeah, big time, sorely mistaken.
Thank you for your time. I'm honored to consider you a friend. I love you. You have a giant reach. Everybody, check out, whoever doesn't know Mansour Ashkar, check him out on Facebook, YouTube. He's got, I think, 35,000 people on Instagram. He's all over the place. He's one of the best voices. And again, a window. America doesn't have this understanding. The West doesn't have this understanding that the Druze people bring an eyes into the Middle East, and you give that all the time. Thank you for the hard work you do. Great talking with you. And
thank you, brother.
We'll see you soon.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you for tuning into yet another episode of the Real Israel podcast with me, Chaim Mailspin, where truth shines, dispelling the darkness. And if you found value in today's episode, please like it, comment, we want to hear from you, and subscribe. Click that notification bell and share it. Join the conversation and be a truth speaker for Israel.